talking back like that.
and, yeah.
Do we have a fire?
You know, hard to say.
All right. The Blendon Township Board of Trustees regular work session meeting is called to order at 5:31 p.m. You may remain seated for a moment of reflection or stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Trustee Adkins. Here. Trustee Siamaka. Trustee Zobel.
Here. In addition to the three of us, we've also got Police Chief John Belford here tonight and our Township Administrator Pat Myers. The purpose of these work sessions is more than anything for the three of us to be able to sit and openly discuss anything that we might be voting on at a later date, because due to open meeting, aka sunshine laws, we're not allowed to do that when we're not in a public forum such as this. Because of that, this is the only time we can do that and discuss these items, so there is no public comment either at the beginning, middle, or end of these work sessions. However, at the regular session, you'll have plenty of opportunities for public comment. That said, would either of you like to start with anything for tonight?
No, you get us going.
All right, I'll get us going. All right. The biggest thing I probably have, maybe the only one, is I spoke to our attorney, Julie Donnan, about the ongoing complaints we've had about inoperable cars in the township and how we could possibly address that. She had an idea that has worked in other townships and municipalities, where it would not be trying to add on or change what the ORC tells us, because that would make it look like we're trying to work around that and not follow their rules. And for any of you listening, the big thing that happens is even if a car is parked somewhere, it's inoperable, it has 2 flat tires and no registration, if it's worth at least $1,500, that thing can sit there pretty much forever. There's not much we can do about it. However, what we can do is create a rule that says no car may be parked on a township road for longer than 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, pick a number, whatever that may be. That takes care of anybody who might be gone for a long period of time on vacation, maybe they're at home recovering from surgery or something like that. But any car would not be able to sit there for that period of time. And then, this is why I asked for the chief to be here, that goes to you to have to ticket the car. And from what Julie told me, you don't get to just put a ticket on the car in that situation. That you have to knock on the door, hand it to the person and say, hey, you either move the car 5 feet, or we have the ability to tow that thing away. And you can tell me how wrong I am about everything I just
So
said.
that's how the ORC used to be back before 2006, when we could chalk tires. And you'd make a chalk mark on the tire and a chalk mark on the pavement, and they had to be moved, you could stick around the car that says has to be moved within 48 hours. When the law changed, we were no longer allowed to do that. And with the language of the new law, it made it extremely difficult if somebody didn't want to move the car. If that is one of the things that a home rule township can do, that would be extremely helpful. It wouldn't be 48 hours, but even if it was 90 days, that would at least give us a mark on the calendar we can track. Right now, what our officers are doing is if it doesn't meet any other criteria that allow us to tow it or ticket it, but it's obviously been there too long, the grass and the moss is growing on it and all that, our officers are still making contact with the owner. They're still getting commitments from them of when they can move the car, what's wrong with the car, do they need any help. They're taking more of a, almost a social worker for autos type approach to it. What can we do to help you get this car moving again or back in shape? Again, we do run into some people that are elderly, that's not their car, it's like their son's car or somebody else's. But that would definitely be a good tool for us to put a mark on the calendar and say it has to be moved by this date.
Okay.
Now we can go back and we're working toward something tangible. So yeah, Julie did not share that with me, but then we never had a conversation about that particular subject. I would absolutely agree that if that's something the legal director says we can do at the home rule township, that would be extremely helpful.
Can I play devil's advocate on this? It's my car. It's not, but it's my car, and I moved it a foot. How do you prove that I did or didn't?
That's always been the problem. That's always been a
I
problem.
remember when you were able to chalk, so if
we
you
would
can't do
chalk-
that.
We would chalk, and anybody who knew the law would go out there and move it that far,
Correct.
and then move it back.
So how do you handle that?
Well, we had some people over the years who've done that one time, after many back and forths, 2 days at a time for a long period of time, they didn't get out there and move it, and our officers were waiting. So it was a car that would have qualified under the old criteria by not moving, and they were able to resolve the situation. We rarely have to do that, though. Most people want their cars in working order, or do have plans to get them off to auto auction or something. They're just procrastinating. And I cannot tell you how many times people procrastinate for years. Months become years very quickly if we don't have a tool to help prod them along. So most of them want to move the car, most of them want to get it fixed, want to get it off to auto auction, donate it to Volunteers of America or something. They just haven't got about it. If they have a police officer standing there saying, you have 90 days, now you have 60 days, now you have 30 days, I think that gets them going to where they wanted to go anyway, they just weren't motivated.
Does that mean the car has to be removed from the street? I'm trying to think of I'm the big picture person, everything that
Moved,
somebody's
made
gonna say.
operational. A lot of times they're not moving them because they're not operational, because it's not their car. So son parks car at parents' house and moves out of state and says, I'll make arrangements for it, and never does. Well, nobody's going out there and moving that car 3 feet or not, that's just sitting there. So we then get some sort of resolution, some sort of something done. It's the neighbors who have to look at the thing that's it's changing from a car to a flower pot with 4 tires, and moss is growing, weeds are growing, people are complaining. That gives us a tool to start working with those people a little more aggressively and on a more restricted timeline than we can't do anything if they don't move it for years.
What would that number be? 30?
That's what I was gonna, do you have a recommendation, like, because you've dealt with it so long, how, do you feel like, okay, I can get most people working in the right direction by the 90-day mark.
So we used to have 48 hours under state law, it had to move every 48 hours. The lowest number that Julie says that we can legally do is going to be the most useful to us. We don't have to impound it. If it's 7 days, we don't have to impound it or take action or write a ticket in 7 days. But the more compressed the timeline is, the more sense of urgency we'll get out of people to fix problems.
Personally, I would not like to see that number be less than 30, and there's a reason for that. My husband and I, in years past, we travel for extended periods of time. There are times we would have a car possibly parked for a 30-day period of time. I don't know how many other people might have that, or if that's even really an issue. Nobody's probably going to turn in a car that's sitting there that's in good shape.
And
It's
an
not
adult
really going
child
to
that's
matter.
away at college, there could be a lot of reasons. Even if it was 90 days, you know, that decision's up to the board. It puts a mark on the calendar that we can work to.
I agree with minimum. I mean, I think that makes sense, because if we go into 60 or 90 days, and maybe there'd be an exception if you're taking off for 30 days, and you call in and say, hey, I'm gonna be gone for 30 days, don't tag me, or even 2 weeks, but I understand what the problem is, because I receive calls too, so I'm totally aware of it. I'm just trying to think of how people will get away from doing it. Those who really don't wanna move their cars are gonna find a way. So how do you effectively say, we saw as of today, this is the day, the 30-day period, or whatever that is, starts?
We can mark it.
You can mark it. Oh, I thought you couldn't.
No, we used to mark it because there was a time limit. If there's a time limit, we'll mark it.
Okay, good.
There is no time limit at this point. It's all based on the value of the vehicle.
Right.
If we place the time
There's
limit,
no point in marking it at this point anyway.
we can mark it
Or you can
though.
prove that the vehicle's inoperable, but in
Right.
Franklin County courts do not consider flat tires inoperable. But if you went up and looked and you could see that there was no engine in it, that's inoperable, and we can get around the value of the car. We can take that as an abandoned junk vehicle. We have to send a certified letter to the last known address of the registered owner, which may or may not be in the neighborhood. And we get that back, they've been served, they've had a certain amount of time, it's obviously inoperable, like not having an engine, we can hook it. So there are some things we can do, it's just very few meet that kind of criteria.
But you can mark it as long as we have a time frame.
If we have time, yeah, we can mark it.
Any opinion from you guys on, because we could go ahead and, if we can agree on something, what's that?
Do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like on a day, because we can have Julie write this up and vote on it at the next meeting.
I agree with minimum, so whatever we feel that is.
I think we'd have to get that from Julie, right? I mean, do we have, we
It's
can set our
whatever,
date.
it's any day, yeah,
No,
it's whatever.
So
Yeah.
it's whatever we decide. Yeah, then at 30, 45 days, I'm
Mhm.
comfortable with either of those.
I'm good with 30.
I'm
We
good with
wanna-
30.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
We can move forward with that. Let Julie know, hey, let's do up a 30-day resolution to move the yellow vehicle. Great.
We're not the highway patrol.
Yeah.
We work with our residents.
Right,
It's
right,
not,
right.
it's not my way of the highway, this is state law, you're out on the interstate highway, boom, this is it. We work with our residents to resolve the problem. If someone has a plausible reason for a delay, we can extend it and say, okay, we'll mark it in a week, or we'll mark it in 2 weeks, and then we'll go from there. We're definitely not out to put an undue financial burden on someone who's having financial problems, for someone who's elderly, or somebody who's got somebody else's car in front of their house. But having that timeline means, for the people who are trying to game the system, the game is gonna come to an end at a date certain.
I know, do either of you have anything?
Keep on rolling.
Yeah, you did great.
Actually, the other thing I had, I'm waiting to hear back on with Julie. I can give you a heads up. One of the things I would like to do, just so you know we're working in that direction, I'm just trying to find out from Julie to make sure it is okay to have a more formal request for donations / sponsorships from area businesses, so that we can create something that says, okay, if you donate $100, you get this level of recognition, 500 this, 1,000 this, you know, that whole bronze, silver, gold, platinum thing, all the way up to, do you want to sponsor a huge project that we're doing in one of the parks and have a permanent sign sitting there? So any ideas that y'all have for that? Again, I'm just waiting to hear back from her to say, yes, this is something that we can do. We can knock on the doors, present them with this and say, this is Linden Township's sponsorship program. We're not promising anything to them, of course. We're not saying you're going to get a contract with us or anything. We're just asking for support from our township businesses.
Would that include ads in the?
Yeah, I was kind of headed that way
newsletter
too. So
ads.
it'd be advertisements as well. We've had that discussion a couple times. It's
Yeah.
like the only thing on my list currently, because I know we talked about it. We just probably need to work on setting
Yeah, so
actual figures.
if they donate X number, that's one of the benefits that they could get.
Yeah, as a also a fiscal officer, how would we really need to make sure that we manage that in a bucket?
In Delaware County, we have an account with Delaware County Foundation, all of the donations. In Franklin County, the Columbus Foundation, the Columbus Foundation does not do that for something this small.
Yeah.
So I think it truly is a Julie question / Joanne question, because we don't have that.
Right.
We pay a fee to the Delaware Foundation, and they take everything goes into them. We tell them what it's for, and we spend out of that account. There's nothing, it doesn't commingle with the general fund and all that stuff. So
it looks, like, again, a CIC type of
yeah,
thing.
each
Well, right, but I mean-
donation's got a specific use, right?
Yes, but we don't have, something like that today. It would have to be established, I would think, so
For this donation?
yes.
Yeah, there'd have to be a way to account for it.
It can't just go right into the fund, so it has to go into a particular
Might be as
section.
easy as just opening another account.
Right.
May not.
Yeah. And like I said, I already sent the question to
I
her.
called the Columbus Foundation about it already. They said, like the minimum deposit for them is like $150,000 to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that first.
So let's manage it, so.
How would this be different though than other times when we're accepting donations from places?
Because these would be for specific purpose.
Okay. All right.
I just think when if you're gonna actively do that for sponsorships / ads for specific, and you're gonna do it in a formal way.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Some donations come in and we can account for them because it says, this is only for senior center, so we do that. But to put it in the general fund, then it has the ability to be spent on things that aren't specific. Right? So we want it to be very specific. And if it was all parks, if it was all whatever, maybe it's as simple as putting it in the parks fund. So if we know, if everything was brought in was going into the parks fund, or everything was going to the cemetery fund, or everything was going to the police fund, but if it's not, then it becomes a little more of a tracking nightmare, but fun nightmare. So I'll make sure that we're legal on that.
We know it can happen, right? I mean, we're in the OTA in, I think, Stark Township, I can't remember, somewhere up north. They have something that is set up to do that. Theirs was specifically around parks though, so we just have to be really specific about how it's being allocated, I guess. I mean, I don't think it's by no means is that a bad idea. I think anything that we can do to
Yeah.
help those things is,
Yeah, and hopefully we can
Great.
get some companies that, are passionate about some of the stuff that we're doing and say, yeah, we want to donate for this whole.
buy-in and
project.
investment.
Yeah,
So.
too, because the city of Gahanna, they probably have the same situation.
Okay.
Right? With her being in the county, she may know more about that than I do up there.
This is going to be the regular meeting. One of the things we're going to be talking about at the regular meeting is the possibility of passing a resolution to ban fireworks. You had brought up that you wanted to speak about that. Would you want to go ahead and
Yeah,
talk about that
can,
at all
yeah.
here? Yeah.
I've been to these meetings for probably 10 to 15 years consistently, and every year this comes up. And we've got passionate people on both sides, and I totally understand both sides because I have animals, you have animals. And I know that you've spoken, and so has Chief Miller, about trying to enforce any ban that you would do. It's almost impossible. So my thought is, do we force the public into a ban? I don't feel comfortable doing that, even though I advocate the reasons why we shouldn't have them. I just almost feel like we're putting too much of ourselves and trying to dictate what everybody can do. That's my personal thought.
So you're more worried about the enforcement angle
The
of it? Is that
well, banning it entirely.
banning it entirely because of the enforcement issue? Sorry. I'm trying
Well,
to get.
it's my understanding from reading at least the documentation before I got here that we were looking at a total ban
Yes.
of fireworks in the
Yes.
township. That's where I would have an issue, is not because of me, I don't use fireworks, but there are people who do. So is it fair to the people who do, as long as they're staying within, I mean, maybe if we could regulate the times that they're shooting on, I know. Well, but even jurisdictions that have implemented bans, from my understanding, from talking when Chief Miller was here, you still can't enforce it. It's almost, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you had mentioned the same thing in a number of these meetings, Chief Belford, is it's so hard to enforce.
So, as I stated the last time the board asked for my input on this, I stated at the beginning and at the end of my comments, I'd like to restate now, because this is the part that kind of got forgotten as people revisited this, is as the police department, we are here to enforce the laws that our elected officials put forward. So we will do exactly that. At one time, it was not against the law to text and drive. At one time, you didn't have to wear a seatbelt. So there came a time where that became the law, and the police department then began enforcing that law to the best of our ability. And that's what I would open and close my comments with. This is an issue for the board to decide. Fireworks enforcement traditionally has been difficult for a lot of reasons. Those calls come in at a great volume in a specific amount of time, like the days surrounding 4th of July or New Year's Eve. So there's a lot of them, and they're typically on a holiday weekend where there's a lot of other calls going on too. So you still have all the other calls for service, accidents and domestic disputes and things, and you're going to these. So by the time we get there, typically, we'll give an intersection, fireworks in the area of. We'll get there and either the fireworks have stopped or they're just not going on while our officers are going through, they go somewhere else. So a lot of these calls are checked, they didn't locate it, and we're moving on. When we do find where the fireworks are, quite often, and I just spoke to Sergeant Moynihan about this, and I said, you know, the rare times that I have as a police officer walked into a backyard and seen somebody firing fireworks, and I've said, hey, you can't, stop, or that noise complaints from the neighbors, and they go, okay, we're done. They see a police officer, and they're like, oh, all right, fine, fun's over, we stop. That's been my experience. Sergeant Moynihan, I asked him, has he ever actually caught anybody using fireworks in all the years he's been responding to these calls? And he goes, yeah, and I walked up on the guy, and he shot the rocket up in the air, and I said, hey, we're getting complaints about noise, and this is landing in other people's yards, and he said, that was my last one. So I'm done. And that was one of the rare times that he had contact with someone. So it is one of those whack-a-mole chasing a lot of noises around that we typically don't have the classic interaction of, well, in the act kind of thing. And in those days, we were responding under disorderly conduct, noise complaints, littering, where debris was falling in other people's yards, those sort of neighbor dispute type responses, and we still weren't having a lot of contact. So once we do, it's like any other violation. There's some officer discretion involved. If they stop a car that's speeding and it's 6 miles an hour over the limit, okay, I'm just gonna write you a warning citation. So that's a lot of what that kind of thing is, or has been in fireworks enforcement. All right, neighbors are complaining, you're saying you're gonna stop, we'll call it that. Are there a few people, just like we talked about with cars, where they're habitually gonna do it and gonna say they're gonna stop and wait till you leave and then do it again, and it's hard to catch them. So the 90% situation is along the lines of what I have said. Under the old, simply responding on neighbor complaints, disorderly conduct. As we would move into a situation where if it was actually against the law to discharge them at all, I would see patterns that would be very similar to that. I wouldn't want people to think that simply because the law was changed, all of a sudden the noise level is going to go down their neighborhood around 4th of July. Yeah, it's not very realistic to think that that traditional long-term behavior is going to stop. If the board chooses to do so, though, we will still respond to those. When we do, we can tell them this is actually a violation of law that you can receive a ticket for. That is very similar to what we do with loud music complaint, right? You are disturbing the peace. We can cite you for this. And typically, they turn down the music or stop. So that kind of working with the community and educating them can continue to go on, whether there is a law against it or not. Having a law against it does give that conversation more teeth, to say, hey, if I have to come back, you can get a $100 fine. We typically do that anyway. If we have to come back, you can be charged with disturbing the peace for making excessive noise, unreasonable noise, turbulent behavior that serves no lawful purpose and cause annoyance, alarm, or inconvenience to another. That's right in the ORC now that we use. So I don't think our response changes a whole lot on the front end. On the back end, we come into, if we are beginning to enforce and prosecute not noise complaints or disturbances, but fireworks complaints. Now we have evidence that we have to seize of fireworks. We have evidence we have to test to show that the fireworks actually worked. Now that can be enhanced with body camera. If my body camera shows you setting off a firework and it going bang, the prosecutor is more likely to move forward with those charges if the person fights it. But if we, barring that, just like with a firearm, we have to prove that that firearm could work. So just being caught with a firearm doesn't get the charge. We have to test the firearm, show a lab report that the firearm was functional. Because they could make the case, well, I had a firearm that it didn't work. But, I pulled the trigger and it didn't go off. It's a broken firing pin. So we have to prove that, just like we have to prove with the fireworks. The problem is, in the storage of the evidence, storing a firearm, we unload it and store it. There's no additional burden to us. But something that has flammable or explosive qualities does bring some other requirements along with it. So I did speak to the Franklin County Sheriff's Office Bomb Squad and the ATF since this became a new conversation to talk about those things. Consumer grade fireworks are sort of strange. I'll start with commercial grade. So if you do find somebody and sees a commercial grade firework, something you can't buy at Phantom Fireworks, something you need a license to buy, that must be stored in what's called a Type 4 explosives magazine. So I did some research on this. The best price I could see on one of those was $5,660. It is a metal box. The interior dimensions is about 38 inches by 38 inches by 38 inches. And you can put the explosives in there and store it outdoors, and it meets all the fire requirements and all the ATF requirements for explosive storage. That's the minimum requirement for any weight of commercial firework that we would have to see.
I'm sorry, he said these are commercial. This is like what Westerville would be.
It would be something that they would need a license to buy, not something you could buy at Phantom Fireworks. So I'm working toward the consumer grade. So if we show up under this, under what might be a new law that the township passes, and it is a commercial grade firework, then that is what our storage requirements would be for a prosecution on that. Consumer grade is a little different in that what we're required to do is follow manufacturer guidelines for storage. So that varies greatly based on the weight and type. If somebody has a handful of Black Cat firecrackers, that's manufacturer guideline storage are going to be easy to meet. We can put that in an evidence log. If they've got a pallet of those, that's going to have a much bigger bang if it detonates. And we have to look at the weight and what does the manufacturer recommend for that weight to store that. If it can fit in that Type 4 magazine, which is, let's say it's empty because we haven't had any consumer grade fireworks, it can go in there. However, that 38 by 38 by 38 space is going to be limiting to how much you can put in there. You can get a bigger magazine, but of course, I just priced the cheapest one I could find. It was $5,600. So a bigger magazine is going to be a bigger price. The cost isn't the real hurdle with the storage. It's the location, it's a site. It has to be 200 feet from any road, railroad, or inhabited structure. The only place we have that we could cite a magazine, and Matt Newman and I drove around, did some measurements and took some pictures. The only place we could find is the field back here where the natural burials are planned to go. So that could be used for consumer grade. However, if we got into a weight that wouldn't fit in there, we would have to come up with some other storage range, storage requirements. We can get full assistance from the state fire marshal automatically on any commercial grade. However, they're going to not want to store it for us for a prosecution. Their goal is to render it inert, destroy it by either burning, detonating it according to manufacturer guidelines, and then we don't have it as evidence in the case. We have often operated under what a lot of police departments do, and I'll give this as an example. When I have taken fireworks away from unaccompanied juveniles, I've always told them, if you want these back, just tell your parents to come to the police station and pick them up. I've been here since 1984. I have never had a parent come to the police station and want the firecrackers back. That actually has some translation to, hey, if we can just get these off the street so they're not hurting anyone, and the state fire marshal is going to destroy them for us, then we've just got the transport of them, but we don't have a prosecution. So the prosecution could be either to maintain them and store them, or to pay a fee to have them, a sample of them tested at a lab. And that would have to be I don't know if this I haven't gotten.
Pays for that.
We would. I don't know the price of the prosecution is the testing. Just like an OVI, if we test urine or blood, we pay the lab fee. You know, like if it's $45, that's part of the prosecution fee that comes out of the police budget. If they, I know they will test commercial grade. I don't know that they will test consumer grade unless there is a bulk amount or a death involved with consumer grade. Like if somebody detonated an entire pallet of firecrackers and somebody was killed, then of course the fire marshal would be involved. I don't know how involved they would get at the lower end of these misdemeanor offenses that we're talking about. So whether you store it for prosecution or you test a sample and enter the expert lab test as evidence of the prosecution, along with any body cam video you may have of them using it, there is some degree of burden and expense to prosecuting these charges. Anytime there's a new law, there's an expense with prosecuting it, as well as anytime we send an officer to court on a prosecution, we incur overtime and travel expense and all that. So that being said, again, it's no different than any other law that any legislative body has ever passed, in that when they make texting illegal, when they make a law that says you have to wear a seatbelt, we start enforcing that. We write more tickets, we go to court more often, we pay more overtime. This has the additional thing that we don't have to have state fire marshal level storage requirements for a cell phone, and we don't have to confiscate the seatbelt for those type of things. So this does have a burden that is just an additional consideration for the board.
What are the other surrounding cities? Because right now, we're the outlier of the other ones who have banned it: Columbus, Westerville, Worthington, Upper Arlington, Hilliard, Dublin, Gahanna, Grove City, Groveport, and Washington Township.
So at my request, the Franklin County Chiefs of Police Association sent out a all points email to all of the police chiefs in Franklin County and asked for a copy of their policy and their procedure, what they're doing on this. I have not gotten those responses yet. Typically, they meet every month. There's a meeting next week, and I can bring it up again there. And typically, when any chief does this on any particular issue, you'll get a sampling, like of the 30 departments. If I get back 5, that still gives me a good picture of what's going on out in the community and how they're handling this. I can tell you, the ATF agent I talked to said there may be a wide, varied response I get back, but the only thing they're allowed to say to us is what he's already said about manufacturer guidelines and storage, because anything other than that incurs liability if something were to go wrong. You do have a lot of long-term fire chiefs and police chiefs around, even in this county, and especially in surrounding counties, that they just soak them in a bucket of water and throw it in the dumpster. I mentioned that to the ATF agent I spoke to, and he said, while that may work, I can't tell you to do that. And my listening to that told me, and we can't have that as a standing policy. Because if something does go wrong with that, then we are liable.
But I think you said earlier, like, we could say, hey, we're not gonna buy the $5,600 thing. We're just not gonna be able to prosecute all this stuff, but we're getting them off the street. We're doing what we need to do, which is not harming the wildlife and starting fires and causing pollution and doing all those things. We're just gonna try
So
and get the education out there.
a good comparison of that would be, for a long time, departments would catch a juvenile with a 12-pack of beer. And the officer would say, this is back in the day now, this doesn't go on in Glennon Township Police Department today. But the officer would say, hey, if you just pour that beer out on the street, we'll forget about this, I won't charge you. Okay, so like a voluntary separation of the beer from the juvenile. A more legal way to do that is to say, this car is registered to your father, so that must be your father's beer. Maybe he can come down here right now and pick up his beer. If that's what they're saying and that's what they do, then you still have the juvenile with possession at the time, unless it was in the trunk, but you have pretty much undone the possibility of any kind of a successful prosecution. You can say, hey, I got a juvenile on the street, I separated him from the alcohol, his parents are now involved, good was done. But there can't be a prosecution on that. You're almost kind of going into a situation like that where to seize property, we're going to have to file the charge. I can't forcibly separate an American from his lawful property without, a Fourth Amendment reason to do so, right? He's got protections there. So I would have to charge him. And an argument could maybe be made that charging someone with knowledge that you don't have a reasonable prosecution would possibly be unethical, simply to separate them from the property. That's the thing I think the board should also think about is anybody over the age of 18 can go to Phantom Fireworks on Cleveland Avenue and lawfully buy consumer-grade fireworks. They can buy a lot of them. So if we are separating people, separating adults from their lawful property, I think we need to be fully vested in doing everything correctly, and making sure that if that's the law we've passed here in Glennon Township, that we are seeking prosecutions when we charge somebody and seize evidence.
And all of that being said, what you just said, what would make the most sense to me is if we're seizing it, we're giving it to the fire department and doing the testing on it. So, because then you could still prosecute, correct?
Right, not the fire department, but the state fire marshal, which would mean transporting it to Reynoldsburg, where their headquarters is. I just don't know what their capacity is. There's going to be a cutoff point. A way of looking at this is when you find a counterfeit $20 bill or a counterfeit $100 bill, and you call the Secret Service, they'll tell you, if you don't have at least $20,000, we're not taking the case. There's a certain threshold before they'll get involved. And I would have to find out from the state fire marshal how low that goes, because I'm sure they're not just testing firecrackers from every misdemeanor arrest in every one of these communities. I would be surprised to find out that they were. I think there's gonna be a threshold of what they would test on a misdemeanor prosecution. I'm sure they'd test anything in a felony.
I think the hard part from all the years that I've heard this happen, and it's every year, is that you guys can't actually find the fireworks. I mean, if somebody reports it, you get there. By the time you get there, how do you decide, okay, there's a crash here, do I address this, or do I address the firework call?
Yeah, we do a crash first.
Yeah, well, I hope so. But then by the time you get to that firework call, nobody's there, and nobody has a firework, and you've been diverted from potentially another crash or something else to this firework call. Now, I'm not advocating for fireworks. I'm not. I want to make sure you understand, all of you understand that. I just see in listening to this every year and hearing fire chief and police chief say, you know, how hard it is and how it diverts our resources, which we don't have a lot of right now anyway, from one thing to another. And then I also remember that first year I was in office, because I'd sat through this every year as a participant in the audience. I did a very informal, and I think you were there, Chief, and I know Jan was there, you may have been there, an informal survey in Sunbury Woods for the concert in the park, because I think that was in June, and I knew the firework thing was gonna come up. So I had my clipboard, and I could go back to my notes. I just wasn't sure what we were doing today. I didn't have time to find them. But I did talk about that at the meeting, that following meeting. I asked the people, I said, you know, if Glendon Township were to consider a ban on fireworks, would you be for or against it? And I think I had asked 60, 70 people, and I'll have to get the stats because I wrote them down and I went over it at the meeting. Everybody except 2 people said they would be not in favor. They wanted to be able to have fireworks. 2 people said they'd be in favor of the ban.
Were these Glendon Township residents?
Yeah,
Did you
well,
ask-
in
you asked
Sunbury
them
Woods.
that?
Yeah, I think I might have, but I might not have. I can go over exactly what it is, but they were in Sunbury Woods for that concert in the park. So, you know, there were people there, people I recognized, not everybody, because, you know, there were 200 or 300 people there, but just kind of sampled around, didn't say which way I was leaning, didn't say anything other than if Glendon Township decided to enact a ban, a complete ban on fireworks, would you be for or against it? And there were only 2 that said they'd be for. I do remember 2. So that's where I sat back a little bit and thought, well, okay, I don't want to impose my views on the masses. I mean, we have a township of approximately 11,000 people. If I feel one way and the majority of the township doesn't feel that way, that's not fair. So I just dropped it and didn't pursue it anymore.
I guess I don't feel like this is a feeling. This isn't an opinion. These are facts, and I'm probably going to reiterate this at the regular meeting here in a little while, but there are some documented impacts. 30 to 60% increase in lost pets around July 4th. Franklin County shelters, all of the animal shelters in the United States have to plan around that surge of those animals going there. That's not a feeling, that's a fact. 14,700 injuries in the U.S. in 2024. 74% of them occurred around July 4th. We've got burns on hands, fingers, head, and face. Adults 25 to 44 are the biggest one, then teens and young adults come next. Children have 30% of the injuries. They cause thousands of fires annually. We see dozens of incidents in central Ohio. We have structure fires, brush fires, EMS calls. Wildlife, the things that it does to wildlife, more than a 20% increase in injured and disrupted wildlife. They can't find their homes, the birds are flying away, things like this, nest abandonment, road deaths, stress injuries. There's environmental impact, pollution, fine particulate matter, inhalable particles are out in the air. And these are all the documented things that happen. This isn't even touching on what you can't research, because there are people with PTSD, such as veterans, huddling in their homes, terrified. There are dogs in their homes, terrified. There are increase in vet visits, increase in costs because you're buying your dogs the medication to keep them from freaking out, those kinds of things. So for me, that's where it goes beyond any type of personal feeling I have about this, and I'm looking at the safety of residents. I would ask anybody to come up with anything positive that they could that a firework does, besides a happy, nostalgic feeling of blowing something up. That's the only thing it does.
I'm not disagreeing with you at
So
all.
again, it goes beyond a feeling. It is there's a lot of facts here. There's a lot of safety concerns. Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything
Yeah.
you said, and I am 100% aware. In fact, I remember when you spoke
Mhm.
to the board about exactly those issues, and I agreed with you then as well.
Mhm.
You know, is it a constitutional right? You know, we're in America. People are going to say, I'm an American. Can't I do this? We've done this for over 100 years potentially. So that will be the opposite end of that. And I understand the feeling. I agree with most of those. I
Yeah.
do. It's just what my feelings are versus the masses. And I think I even checked on this a while back, Pat. You may have checked with Julie Donovan. I asked if this is something we could put on the ballot. And I believe the answer to that was no, because I thought that would be the most fair way to do this. Let the public decide what they want. Do you remember when I
Yeah,
asked?
it'd be a home rule resolution, that's
Right.
why.
Yeah.
It's just up to the table, so yeah, it's
I know.
it doesn't have.
But I mean, I thought back then, this would be a fair way, because am I biased, thinking the way you do? You know, do I speak for myself, or do I speak for everybody in the township? So, you know, I had to back down a little bit, especially when I did that very informal survey, because it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what the entire township thinks. And you're right, there's a lot of safety issues. I'm not disagreeing with anything you said, not one thing you said. And it'd be great if we could put it on a ballot, but we can't.
It's already illegal in most cases. I don't see how it really changes much for us to officially just say it's something different. I think it does negatively impact folks along East of Hoover who may have the property and the space to do it legally.
They do it all the time.
And if we're looking at this holistically, the residents in Sunbury Woods and in Hoover Ridge, Cleveland Heights, should not ever be under the impression that they can do this legally. It's 18 years of age, can't be drinking, 150 feet away from people and buildings for the aerials, 50 feet away from, on the ground from, for the fountain, ground style fireworks. For the
Restricted date times.
yeah, restricted from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m., which is a total of 112 hours a year. It's just not, I know that it does have impacts for folks emotionally, and it would for the people on the other side who also have been doing this and have enjoyed something that they've been doing. Whether that be cultural, whether that be in celebration, whatever that is. It's 349 days of the year that this is banned completely. It is 7 hours a day for 16 days a year. I know that that does impact a portion of the population, but it also impacts a portion of the population the other direction as well. I can't justify it in my mind. We have to store it. You have to notify the fire marshal within 72 hours. So the police have, whoever the responding officer is, has a task to do. They retain, they photograph, they supply some sampling if the state fire marshal is willing to take it, and then the court has to order the destruction. So it actually has to, it has to go through the process of taking property from an adult in order to actually go to a destruction. It's a lot. It's paperwork, cost, officers that aren't working, or we're paying them overtime. There's a lot there. I can't fiscally wrap my mind around how that's responsible.
I'm going to go back to what you said, that right now it's basically illegal as it is in Hoover Ridge, Sunbury Woods, and Cleveland Heights. So this would be nothing more than putting it out there and telling them, because what happened when Ohio said, okay, it's legal now, you can do this, the incidents went up. You can see those across the board. I didn't pull out those numbers, but they did. By putting a ban in place, those people who weren't doing it before would at least stop doing it now. most
I
places.
I don't think
I
they
don't
will.
think that
I
checks
don't,
out.
there's, whenever you
It's
have
already
set
illegal, though.
rules in place, they don't know that. And people do not understand these rules. They see that, oh, we can do this at a certain time on certain days, and they're doing it right next to a house that they could catch on fire. To have some visible enforcement, some education from the township to say this is not who we want to be. And again, following in the footsteps of all of these other places. I can name them again: Columbus, Westerville, Worthington, Upper Arlington, Hilliard, Dublin, Gahanna, Grove City, Groveport, Washington Township. We can keep going to Akron, Cincinnati, Mentor, Rocky River, Twinsburg, and Medina that have all said, stop.
A very large portion of those on that list have their own municipal court system and government, where they can prosecute those on their own. They have budgets that are much higher than London Township. I understand the concern for the community as a whole. It's been banned in Columbus, but we're three streets away from Columbus, and in Casto Park, in the park that's right around the corner on Cooper, I can't remember whether it's Cooper Park or not, all night long. I mean, it doesn't change the behavior. This is just as enforceable as saying we have a ban in this, local form of government as well, with the exception of it being possibly detrimental to a group of people who can do it, east of Hoover, legally, and then just continuing to go after the existing people in the same way that we always have, which is stop. But I think education is the main thing. You've said it a couple of times. I think education around the rules is what's responsible and necessary, more than willing to say, hey, let's put a long article, let's put this in the email, let's make sure that this gets delivered to every single house. I don't know that it's fiscally responsible for us to make this an ongoing thing where we have to continue to do this.
I just want to say, elected officials, allocate the resources, set the priorities, and speak for the people. Police department stands ready to provide our services as the board sees fit.
All right. You wanted to do, I think we have 9 minutes if you want to do the newsletter stuff. You three, all right, go.
So, summer newsletter, anything the three of you want in there, from you, any message or anything, Taylor needs it by June 1st, okay?
Do we have a limit?
It was like 280 words the last time, I think.
Send it, we'll make it fit. Mail date no later than June 30th, we'll get it out before that. Here's what we think we're gonna do so far. You raise your hand, you don't like it.
June the 30th.
That's
Okay.
what I'm
Mail
calling,
date.
yeah.
If you don't like it, say so. NAC application information, continuing to educate people they can be part of the NAC. All the summer concert series information, the next two after June 13th, what's already been in, including the car show, the most recent employee spotlights, any updates from directors that we think is important. Trustee updates, already gave you that. List of all the board of trustee meetings, QR code for sign up for email, Blend and Blooms information, Dog Fest information, updates on, if there's any updates by then, on my position, and things like that. So that's what we have so far. So,
Did you list the complete calendar for the year?
June 27th.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The complete calendar for the
So-
year?
Yeah,
'Cause I think we were,
Yeah.
no,
could
did
bump
you
that,
list
huh?
that on there?
Yeah, if
Like,
we
you
get
know how
the
we have it
stuff
on our
together.
calendar, where any of the events we have scheduled for the
all
whole
the
year?
events are listed in the newsletter.
Okay, so we had all of them, because
Yeah.
we didn't have all the concert in the
Yeah,
parks
it
the
will
last
be
time.
this,
Okay.
with the review one because it was the spring.
Okay.
But we're gonna put them, both the other ones in this one.
First June.
June 1,
June.
June 1 is a Monday.
Concert in the park.
13th. June 13th, Saturday, June 13th.
We were just, he was reminding me that Dog Fest is June 27th, so we
So it would
want to
be
get that
after
out.
when this will go out. So we can
Says,
get it off this-
says try and mail before the
The
27th.
concert and
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
that too,
Yeah.
so.
Well, if you guys get all the information in, we can probably get it out, mailed out before I leave.
If you can get it on a Monday,
Give me a
people
chance
can
to
have it by,
train- Which would give me a chance to train Taylor, and Taylor knows how to do most of it as it is, but.
so it's gonna take, just so you know, because I send a lot out through postal and PDDM, and it's gonna take probably 4 business days to get to the public. Used to be 2 or 3, but I just sent one out a week ago and it just got to people
Okay.
today.
Okay.
So knowing that, you're gonna have to kind of time it to go out.
Well,
Before the
the
20
plan is,
We'd have to
the
look at
plan
it.
is to get it out before I leave, that's June 8th.
Then if he said before he leaves, then it's the 10th, right?
Okay, that'd be good.
That gives us,
I think that would be
His
the
last
best.
day.
Monday the 1st gives us a week. If you guys have your stuff, then that gives us a week to get it, print it, get it to Kenwell, get it to the post office before the end of that week. Okay? So that's all I had on that. Taylor asked me to run that stuff by, make sure you guys were good with that information.
Okay.
All right? That's all I had.
We're all good?
We're good.
All right. I move to adjourn the Blendon Township Board of Trustees regular work session meeting at 6:24 PM.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
Trustee Atkins.